After 20 years. Adapted from a short story by O. Henry. The policeman on the beat moved up the avenue impressively. The impressiveness was habitual and not for show, for spectators were few. The time was barely 10 o'clock at night, but chilly gusts of wind with a taste of rain in them had nearly de-peopled the streets. Trying doors as he went, the officer, with his stalwart form and slight swagger, made a fine picture of a guardian of peace. When about midway of a certain block, the policeman suddenly slowed his walk. In the doorway of a darkened hardware store, a man leaned, with an unlighted cigar in his mouth. As the policeman walked up to him, the man spoke up quickly.
"It's all right, officer,"
he said reassuringly.
"I'm just waiting for a friend. It's an appointment made 20 years ago. Sounds a little funny to you, doesn't it? Well, I'll explain if you'd like to make certain it's all straight. About that long ago, there used to be a restaurant where this store stands, Big Joe Brady's restaurant."
"Until 5 years ago,"
said the policeman.
"It was torn down then."
The man in the doorway struck a match and lit his cigar. The light showed a pale, square-jawed face with keen eyes and a little white scar near his right eyebrow. His scarf pin was a large diamond, oddly set.
20 years ago tonight,"
said the man,
"I dined here at Big Joe Brady's with Jimmy Wells, my best chum, and the finest chap in the world. He and I were raised here in New York, just like two brothers together. I was 18 and Jimmy was 20. The next morning I was to start for the West to make my fortune. You couldn't have dragged Jimmy out of New York. He thought it was the only place on earth. Well, we agreed that night that we would meet here again exactly 20 years from that date and time, no matter what our conditions might be or from what distance we might have to come."
"It sounds pretty interesting,"
said the policeman.
"Haven't you heard from your friend since you left?"
"Well, yes, for a time we corresponded,"
said the other.
"but after a year or two we lost track of each other. You see, the West is a pretty big proposition, and I kept hustling around over it pretty lively. But I know Jimmy will meet me here if he's alive, for he always was the truest, staunchest old chap in the world. He'll never forget I came 1,000 miles to stand in this door tonight, and it's worth it if my old partner turns up."
The waiting man pulled out a handsome watch, the lids of it set with small diamonds.
3 minutes to 10.
He announced.
It was exactly 10 o'clock when we parted here at the restaurant door.
"Did pretty well out west, didn't you?"
asked the policeman.
"You bet. I hope Jimmy has done half as well. He was a kind of plodder, though, good fellow as he was. I've had to compete with some of the sharpest wits going to get my pile. A man gets in a groove in New York. It takes the West to put a razor edge on him."
The policeman twirled his club and took a step or two.
"I'll be on my way. Hope your friend comes around all right. Going to call time on him sharp?"
"I should say not,"
said the other.
"I'll give him half an hour at least. If Jimmy is alive on Earth, he'll be here by that time. So long, officer."
"Good night, sir,"
said the policeman, passing on along his beat, trying doors as he went. About 20 minutes the man waited, and then a tall man in a long overcoat, with collar turned up to his ears, hurried across from the opposite side of the street. He went directly to the waiting man.
"Is that you, Bob?"
he asked doubtfully.
"Is that you, Jimmy Wells?"
cried the man in the door.
"Bless my heart,"
exclaimed the new arrival, grasping both others' hands with his own.
"It's Bob, sure as fate. I was certain I'd find you here, if you were still in existence. Well, 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 20 years is a long time. The old inn gone, Bob. I wish it had lasted, so we could have had another dinner there. How has the West treated you, old man?"
"Bully! It has given me everything I asked it for. You've changed lots, Jimmy. I never thought you were so tall by 2 or 3 inches.
"Oh, I grew a bit after I was 20.
Doing well in New York, Jimmy?"
"Moderately. I have a position in one of the city departments. Come on, Bob. We'll go around to a place I know of and have a good long talk about old times.
The two men started up the street arm in arm. The man from the west, his egotism enlarged by success, was beginning to outline the history of his career. The other, submerged in his overcoat, listened with interest. At the corner stood a drugstore, brilliant with electric lights. When they came into this glare, each of them turned simultaneously to gaze upon each other's face. The man from the west stopped suddenly and released his arm.
You're not Jimmy Wells.
He snapped.
20 years is a long time, but not long enough to change a man's nose from a Roman to a pug.
It sometimes changes a good man into a bad one,
said the tall man.
You've been under arrest for 10 minutes, Silky Bob. Chicago thinks you may have dropped over our way and wires us she wants to have a chat with you. Going quietly, are you? That's sensible. Now, before we go on to the station, here's a note I was asked to hand you. You may read it here at the window. It's from Patrolman Wells.
The man from the west unfolded the little piece of paper handed to him. His hand was steady when he began to read, but it trembled a little by the time he had finished. The note was rather short.
Bob, I was at the appointed place on time. When you struck the match to light your cigar, I saw it was the face of the man wanted in Chicago. Somehow I couldn't do it myself, so I went around and got a plainclothes man to do the job, Jimmy.